This video is a recorded session between me and my cousin Jennifer Pellerin as we explore a series of questions about my life, past and present. The recording took place on March 2nd, 2025 at 9 a.m. Throughout this session, you'll hear a range of topics discussed. While Jennifer's audio and video are not included, we've tried to add context to keep the conversation as clear as possible. The craziest thing that I've ever done? I don't know that I could really define that, but I think probably one that jumps out at me is late night in Long Beach with a group of friends. I stole a taxi cab and it was parked out front and it was running. And we had a primer coat on, probably 5 or 6 drinks into the night, bar hopping. And the guy had parked it out front. And me and Kendall jumped in it and drove it. When we drove it a half mile. But the point is that the guy came out with his patron to give him a ride, right? And his car's gone. And we're sliding it around corners, jumping off curbs and, running into the next barn. The guy comes in looking for us. And it was just stuff that you see in the movies. And you're just like, I, you know, not the most intelligent stuff that I could, bring to the table, but certainly under the heading of some of the nuttier things that I've done for sure. Not sure I had the bandwidth at a young age to understand what that concept even meant. Everything was a very reactive, just kind of, you know, this is the world and do the best you can with it kind of thinking. There really wasn't like anybody that I looked up to at that age because I don't think I understood what looking up to something actually was. But I can tell you that the most consistent people in my life brought the most light to my life. That's not something you even calculate. That's just a hard space kind of thing. And that was obviously our grandmother. And I think Jim and Darlene, because they've never been anything but Jim and Darlene at 2557 Tennyson, those consistencies for me were probably the greatest memories I had growing up because I was involved on a daily basis in both of those people's lives. And they were highly influential on me. Even though my home life was somewhat tumultuous and very dynamic, those two consistencies represented a safe space. And we have a way of micro calculating our home environment energy without words through body language. And we're antennas when we're young. We're impressionable, and we're experiencing a lot of things that aren't verbal. And I think that a lot of that probably difficult energy that my parents were having between each other that was even non-spoken or behind closed doors was absorbed by me and given me mixed signals as to what a safe home actually represented at a young age. So when I went to my grandmother's house, that was it. That was the place to be. And I went there every single day. I walked home and stayed there every day after school. So I spent every single day there for a very long time. And yeah, and then Jim and Darlene's was the holidays. So those were great cornerstones of my upbringings. Not sure I could add much more to what we just talked about, but at a young age, those things were probably the most influential, most important, the most meaning, if you want to quantify meaning. Um, but when we start getting into like young teens and that kind of thing, my dad had a good job. My mom and dad bought a really nice house. I went to a really nice school, and I had really nice friends. And I started experiencing life at a kind of a different level than what I had previously experienced it at. And I was in an affluent upper class neighborhood. I was really fortunate to be able to grow up in that environment. And in doing so, I had some great experiences. We had a really nice home life, beautiful holidays. Um, that was pretty neat to experience. And I look back and then realize how lucky I was to have been in those, in those places at a young age. Yeah, I think if you look at an entire story arc about who and what I represent as a human being, I mean, from a young age, I don't think I brought a lot to the table as far as what we would traditionally quantify intelligence, but I brought a lot of perception to the table and a lot of heart space. I just loved deeply and really looked at the world as a unique kind of way. Wanted to know how things work behind the curtain, not necessarily how things worked on the surface, right? And so the things that kind of shaped me growing up were, I was young. My mom would always kind of tell me, "Don't do this, don't do that." And being a kind of a mischievous young man, I was interested in pushing the boundaries and trying to find out for myself what the world held behind those, I guess you'd call closed doors or hidden mechanisms. And from time to time, whether it be a bicycle or a bump on the noggin, I was getting beat up a little bit here and there, from falling off my bike and getting stitches to getting bit by dogs to getting bit by cats to, I was just kind of in that ping pong ball kind of environment and thinking, what is this all about? Why do I keep getting hammered like this? And at some point, there was a mechanism that tripped in my brain and said, you've got to fight back. And so I kind of took that to another level and started to become a little bit less nice and a little bit more offensive in my behaviors. That led to some areas of my personality that I'm probably not the most proud of. But, we all look at life as an experience, and those experiences are represented within our decisions. And those decisions over time add up to make you the person you are. And I think looking back, to take it from a reactive to a proactive approach and really overcompensate for what I was at the time, kind of a weak individual, a weak heart space, a weak physical person. Um, I kind of overstepped my boundaries and got into a place of kind of hateful behavior because I felt like this world just keeps kicking me and beating me down. If I'm gonna be nice, I'm gonna get beat up. And so I'm gonna fight back. And when I fought back, I got, like I said, a little bit over the top, kind of aggressive and proactive in not being such a nice guy. And that brought out a part of my heart that I was not very proud of. And I made some decisions that I'm not proud of. But at the same time, I think everybody has to kind of go from like 0 to 100 and then find out what 50% looks like. You got to figure out your thresholds, and you're going to have to break some things to figure out how to fix them. And so my mental health took a beating as a result, and my heart took a beating as a result. And I had to kind of go through a series of self discovery experiments and experiences to kind of bring me back to who I am today and liking myself again. And along the way, that was one of the more challenging experiences energetically that I've ever had to go through because you know, I don't think a lot of people realize it, but when they're mean to other people, they're mean to themselves, right? This is not a metaphor. This is literally like the way you treat others comes back to you, kind of thing. And so, we just kind of have to go there to get to where we're at, and that's what I did. And along the way, I hurt some people. I said some things. I did some things that I'm not proud of. But look, I think we all have those files, and I don't hold myself in contempt anymore. I don't think I'm a bad person anymore, and I certainly don't have the guilt and the shame that brought me really to a kind of a sad place. I'm just realizing that those moments of self discovery and experimenting were nothing more than learning, and they were unfortunately learning things what a lot of people define as the hard way, but they're not. They're not really the hard way. They're the way. That's just the way you learn. And some people take longer than others, but when it's all said and done, it brought me to a better place, brought me to a better understanding of myself, and it brought me to a kinder place. So, if we look at our lives and kind of break it down into a series of decisions that could represent that of a computer code, there's a real clear and I'd say probably a really fair analogy that says that every single one of those characters represents a decision. And every one of those characters, if you know anything about computer code, cannot be removed in order to have that program run properly. So if you like who you are today, all of the decisions, all of the choices, all of the good and bad experiences were absolutely necessary to make you the person you are today. And that being said, here I am today doing this interview, which probably would not have considered in that bad heart space, but I'm proud of who I am today. It's all good. There's just there's really no reason to go back and say, because we make bad choices, we're bad people. We're the choices that we make daily. We're not the choices we made yesterday. So that's it. You know, um, I don't want to sit around and talk about bad experiences because those are not necessary or productive thinking as far as any more learning is concerned. But in honestly answering your question and sharing my life experiences with any of those people that may be interested and or watching this, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. I mean, think about that for a moment because there's quite a few, right? We talk about bringing people into this world and doing it in a conscious way. And I'm really proud of Miranda and the things that she's done in this world and the person she's become, and the fact that I had an opportunity to experience her life with her and be there when she was born and teach her how to ride a bike and now see and who and what she is today, knowing that I had a hand in some of that and that she's a part of me is really special. So that's certainly one of the most important things that I can talk about. Um, Having an experience with being married before and having to learn about what a marriage represented and or a commitment to another human being and the consistencies that resolve around that, and then having a son out of that deal. Even though I'm not a part of his life, he may have an opportunity to see this one day. I think the best decision is that somebody else that had more tools and more consistency at the time he was growing up was capable of representing parenthood to him. And for whatever reason our roads parted, but that doesn't mean that I didn't want to be the best person, and make the best decisions, which at the time I thought was, and I still actually think so because he's doing quite well. So if he ever has to cross this video and think about how I think of him, most certainly I think I'm proud of who he's become, and I'm proud of what he's done, and I'm proud of the fact that I had some hand in bringing this to the table, but that the family that has kind of brought him up has done a good job, and I'm thankful for that. So those two pieces of the equation, having fathered two kids, being married, and then getting divorced, and then reconnecting with somebody that is much more representative of my heart space, much more representative of the kindness and the family that I call home. And she's my wife now, Jen. So those are the three most important things I think that um, stick out when it comes to the question that you asked. Definitely. Well, through making some crummy decisions and getting to a place where I think chemistry had a upper hand in my daily thinking, it was difficult for me to decide what was the right choice because your thinking gets confused, your decisions get confused, right? And as a result, it was important at some point to be able to take and realize that this is nobody else's fault. This is nobody else's choices. This is nobody else's decision. This is all your thinking that brought you to where you're at. And so in doing so, taking accountability, taking responsibility, and owning the fact that you know uh, this isn't like something that happened to you. This is something you've created. So what can you learn from it? And what can you use out of this equation to make you a better person? You can let it define you, or you can put it behind you. And getting on the other side of that is really trying to figure that out. I think it's probably one of the more difficult roads. Like it's the old saying, the most difficult this one of the most difficult decisions in a man's life is which bridge to burn and which one to give another shot at, right? And so when life gets tough, you kind of have to like pause, reflect, make a decision as to which one of those directions is most viable for your current situation. The mind's in an incredibly complex place, and in doing so, our thinking is something that can make or break us. And I think we really do create our world by the way we perceive things and the choices that we make as a result. So when it came to getting confused, circling back to your question, it's really a difficult place to kind of get lost in your own head and not sure which decision is the right one to make. But it led me to some really uncomfortable places, taking some uncomfortable medicines for some uncomfortable reasons with some uncomfortable doctors, and staying in some places overnight that I could have never imagined myself in as a young man. But I inevitably ended up there as a result of my own thinking and of my own doing. And so having to own all that and take responsibility for that and realize that this is nobody else's fault but mine, or this is nobody else's thinking but mine, is the most important step in overcoming that. And I think once you can kind of swallow that and say, okay, I'm not going to let it define me anymore. I'm just going to try and figure out what I can learn from this and try not to do it again. That's kind of the real size and shape of what we have to do in learning. And learning is the number one teaching tool human beings have. So in that space, I think overcoming confusing thinking is the top of my list, because everything stems from that, right? So I can take all the unique experiences and all of the accolades and all of life experiences and say those were all neat, but those are all coming from a confused thinking standpoint. So what are they really? Were they given experiences? Were they just happen chance? Were they a manifestation of a confused mind and just so happened that they had some lights associated with the darks? Cool, but probably not nearly as impactful as just taking the simplistic mindset in a peace of mind space and saying, you know what, it's so much, it's so much more valuable to live in this headspace than it is the other one. And I can say with all conviction, I've lived in both of them 100%. And I know what it's like. So this isn't an imagination trying to figure out which one. These are two completely different energetic signatures that have completely different personalities and representations as human beings. And I know that sounds really confusing and complex, but here's the truth, people. We are not the same person we are when we're young. We grow through life experiences and we morph through a lot of different changes, and the life can mold us into different things. And so that's where I'm at with that. I mean, it's not even really worth talking about like I've done this or I've done that. That's the accomplishment. That's the real root of everything. And so for anybody that wants to talk about life experiences, that's all there is for me, is overcoming a confusing space and being in a peace of mind spaces. That's it. If I could speak to the people behind me, if I could speak to the people that I love and that are possibly going to get something out of this, anybody that may be watching this, it's the most important thing that we can all consider living in this physical world the way it is designed, that I have figured out for me, is that without peace of mind and without your health, everything else doesn't matter. And when one of those two goes sideways, I promise you, everything else won't matter. No amount of money in the world is going to fix either one of those things. So you have a responsibility to yourself day in and day out to build the best peace of mind foundation and the best healthy physical body that you can possibly imagine. And then stand back and marvel at the unbelievable engineering in both of those spaces that you have been given and born into. That's the biggest thing. We're all taking for granted what we are all living in. And we beat the living shit out of it, thinking that it is not worth anything. For whatever reason, our central nervous system and the world, the way it's designed, sometimes just says all this magical information that we've been given to live in is out to get us. Like it tricks our thinking into thinking that we would rather just tear it down than build it up. And when you start to learn about going to the gym and eating really well and how your brain is designed to work, separate hemispheres, multiple parallel processing, all the 600 billion neurons, the axons, the dendrites, like all of the chemicals that make all that stuff work, and then how the body fixes itself over time and rebuilds all the cells. And let me tell you, this is no joke. This thing is one badass machine. And if you've ever built anything and then you kind of reverse engineer a little bit of just the basics of the human body and the mind, you start to realize what an incredible gift you've been given. And so to take care of that every day is without question the only thing that matters because everything is stemmed from those two spaces. It's the only thing. So philosophically speaking, it's easy to kill it when you feel good. It's not easy to kill it when you don't feel good, right? And that's the hardest thing. But that's also kind of what defines us as champions in a lot of ways. And studying consistency for a very dynamic personality like myself, very dynamic chemistry like myself, was an interesting kind of dive into a new space. Like no matter how you feel, you got to show up, right? And then when you start to break it down, you're like 9/10 of the law is just showing up, right? It's not so much about what you are when you get there. It's the fact that you could put your personal feelings aside long enough to stay consistent and put somebody else's priorities above your own. Yeah, well, my uncle Jim probably is one of the more profound, deep thinkers in my existence. As a young man, I kind of looked up to him because he had, these identities through our world as represented by, you know, big titles and big jobs with big responsibilities. But the more I got to know the man, the more I realized that, his mind was such an interesting place to have a conversation with. There's not many people like that in our family. And I will say this that he's been one of the most influential deep thinkers in my existence. Just having basic conversations with somebody like that to get the ideas thrown back at you and how they see the things was really cool. I've always enjoyed having those conversations with him. And then I think Jen, my wife, is probably one of the most influential characters on a day to day basis that represents who and what I have become because she's got the biggest hand in making me a better person day in and day out. She's consistent. She's um, morally and ethically and heart space wise just overflowing and has allowed me to just be the best version of myself. And consistency wise, yeah, we make a good team. I'm in Redondo Beach. I'm with my now wife. We were just dating at the time, and I was going to the psychiatrist, and they were giving me these meds, and I was venturing into a world of new experiences for the first time. Kind of like had gotten off the fast train and was starting to rebuild my experiences as a human to who and what I am today. But it was like, okay, got off that train. Now I'm getting on another train. And this train's just starting to kind of get rolling. And it was kind of like jumping into a rabbit hole of things that I'd never experienced before. My point in saying, without kind of getting into the gory details, was like I started diving into some philosophical places and some nightly radio shows that allowed me to really open up my mind and the doorways and pathways in my mind that I didn't know really were there before, right? Take the world at face value, a difficult place to live. Take the world for things you can't see and start to open up some of those kind of possibilities and let your imagination run a little bit. She gets a little more complicated. And so that was kind of the breach of the traditional mind space where everything's just surface and face value into a space of, okay, now we're going to really dive into this deal and open up into a world of the unknown, right? The We're on the night train now, and um it's not the party night train, it's the night train of, like, we're into a deeper place of thinking. Granted, I don't do that much anymore because I look again at a very productive kind of space in my daily activities. Those were really fun and exciting worlds to venture into to allow me to be a different and better person. So those were highly influential times. That's a complicated question, but I think most importantly is I think, for any of us that can't be here in the physical sense anymore, it's really important for us to know that our loved ones are not going to be held up by this physical form, and that the spirit lives on, and that I will be by your side no matter what happens. But I need you to continue, with your journey and doing good for the world and sharing your heart space, because the value that you bring to people's lives as a result of your consistent love and kindness is, you know, something that certainly influenced me. And I want you to share that with other people, no matter what that looks like. If that represents another partner, if that represents another organization, if that represents another podcast or another interview or another client, don't stop doing the good stuff, because the world needs more gens. It's that simple. And I appreciate the time we've had together. It's been a joy. And thank you for sticking by my side when things weren't so easy. But I think in the end, it shows that all of the times that we go through in this world may not be easy, but if we stick with it, that it becomes worth it. Yeah, I think, if you look back at some of the things that I've shared in this interview, it's important for you guys to understand that, though I may not have been there for you day in and day out, that my heart was there for you, and I did the best that I could with what I had to work with at the time. But it was necessary for me to go out and find myself to show you what I'm showing you today. And as a result, I would like to think that even though I'm not there with you in person, that my heart space now, because it echoes through your heart space in a lot of ways, is helping you be a better person. So the fact that I've improved helps you improve, and that you can be the best person that you know how to be, and doing kind things for people that may not matter, may not be able to do anything for you in return. But no matter how horrible the world may ever get to you, don't ever stop being kind, because I'm speaking from experience. Fighting back and becoming one of them does nothing but destroy you. Take care of your teeth and eat with purpose and go to the gym. That's simple. Oh, well, I've had quite a few dogs in my world, and they've all been wonderful. And because we are dynamically growing and mindsets are changing through all of our experiences, every one of those dogs represented exactly what I needed in the time that they were with me. And I loved all of them. But when I was kind of fighting the demons really bad, Ripley showed up in my life, and sat by my side day in and day out and never asked for me to be any more than I was or capable of being. And has been the greatest addition to both mine and Jen's lives. And we really, really are thankful for her. So to her, thank you for that. The representation of just genuine, consistent love day in and day out. I really needed that, and I'm so grateful for her every day. To my extended friends and the rest of the people that may experience this or have ever crossed my paths, thank you for being there and being a part of my journey. And to the people that I may have stepped on their toes inadvertently along the way of learning about myself, my apologies once again. We won't do that again. So thanks for being there. Well, I think I touched base on it a little bit earlier, but I think it's really
Um,
important that no matter how hard the world gets, never stop being kind, right? I mean, that's a test. Like, what kind of character are you behind closed doors, kind of thing? What kind of character are you when nobody's looking? And as dynamic as I was before, I'm the same guy that day in and day out, the person that you see face to face is the person that I am when nobody's looking, right? Or when nobody can see me, right? And so I try and carry that day in and day out because it all matters. Everything counts in large amounts. It's an old song that we used to listen to by a band called Depeche Mode. I enjoy it. It means, it means a lot when you think about what we're talking about. Everything counts. And so be a consistent person, not because somebody's watching, because you're watching. And you're your own advocate for being a kind human being. So the memories of what I'd like carried on or remembered about me, most importantly, is that I was kind no matter how tough the world got. Number one. Number two, take your health seriously because I do, and it matters. And be proactive in your thinking, be productive in your thinking. Don't be reactive in either one of those because playing catch up sucks. And those are all learned values from experience that I would like to think that the people behind me can benefit from my mistakes. Just kind of not take things for granted is probably the most valuable lesson I could talk to my younger self about. Not take things for granted. And how do you do that? That's the deepest, like, most difficult philosophical representation to a space. Like, how do you convince somebody that's not fat, sick, and nearly dead to eat better? Because you see how they eat and you don't think that they're doing themselves any good. Like, how do you have that conversation with other, people? And that's something I've had to work really hard on because, like, when you start to feel better after you haven't felt great, you're like, hey, I want to bottle and sell this. I want to tell everybody about it. I want to, open up a store and tell everybody how to do it. Like, no, no, that's not what people want. People want attraction rather than promotion. They don't really want this. Somebody's going to go around and tell them how to do shit, right? And if they ask you, you tell them. You open a book, but you're not running around telling everybody how to do shit, right? And so, go to the dentist, take care of your teeth, use a water pick, take care of your teeth under the gum line, eat with purpose, eat really good, and move your body. And don't take those things for granted because they catch up to you. That's the best thing. So I think, being able to help people in a very broad brush kind of sense, like having a general store of sorts, allows me to help people in a lot of different ways, doing a lot of different things because I have a lot of different experiences in my life and I've learned how to do a lot of things. So when somebody asks me for help and I can help them, I try to. And whether that's doing something constructively, like with construction work, or if that's doing something on the computer, or that's doing something like decorating or whatever, like, can I make window coverings on the sewing machine and pillow with hidden zippers? Yeah. Yeah. I taught myself how to do that. Right. I bought a sewing machine. I taught myself how to sew and I made all the window coverings in our house. I made all the hidden zipper pillow covers in our house. I mean, those are things. Can I fix the side of the house and repair the plumbing when it need to be? Yeah. Can I get on Photoshop and put somebody in a photo that wasn't there at a family dinner that I want to be there? Yeah, I can do that too. So, like, those are all just kind of like Swiss Army knife little things that I can do to help people, and I enjoy helping people. So, fortunate to have a pretty good bag of tricks. Every day, there's an opportunity again to help somebody that I love do something for um, kind of a purpose, and that's kind of how my art is really grown roots. When I have to help Jen rebuild her speaking reel, for example, and I need to figure something out, my mind digs in and goes where it needs to go to get what it needs to get to come back and say, here we go, let's do this, right? Um, when I'm just kind of sitting around with a scratched piece of paper and don't really have a direction, I don't have this burning desire to sit around and play art class. But when I have a reason to help somebody, I figure it out and I want to be of service the best way that I can. There were times when I felt completely melted, like I was at the end of my wits. And through all my experiences as a human being, somehow I've been able to figure out how to make those things make me stronger instead of hurt me. So I wish that I could tell you this is what you need to do. This is the series of events. This is the sequence of events. This is the thoughts. This is the food. This is the whatever. I can't share that with you. I can just tell you that some of us have a mind that decide things and nothing stops it. And other things, may be more difficult than your mind can overcome. So it's really just a mental kind of jujitsu kind of a scenario where you're just going to arm wrestle with yourself and decide which is enough. And for some people, it's never enough. For other people, the first sign of trouble, they go the other direction. That's okay. We're all doing our own thing in our own time, in our own way, learning our own experiences. So there's no right or wrong. While I couldn't include some very important people in this session, it's important that I take the time to acknowledge a few of them. To my mom, to Ken, Janie, Norm, my cousins Jen and NC3, to my cousins Jim Ashley Jr., Lee, Beth, my Aunt Darlene, and to the rest of my extended friends and family. You guys have all been very instrumental in shaping the person you see here today, so I thank you.